welcome you back into Newsmax Now, taking a live look at the Baltimore City Police Department. We are standing by for a news conference. You see a camera guy right there getting a focus. This is a live feed, so stay with us. Anthony Watts, the police commissioner, will be speaking here very soon. We're going to stand by. When he does begin to talk about the issue, we will bring you there and have his comments.
And now for a look at some of the other stories that are making headlines today. The Supreme Court is hearing oral arguments today over whether people have a constitutional right to same-sex marriage. Today's hearing is expected to last a few hours, and no one seems to know which way the High Court is leaning, but Justice Stephen Breyer says he doesn't understand why gay marriage can't be decided at the ballot box. The EPA launches an $84,000 study to see how churches can better preach climate change. The money will be used to develop programs aimed at teaching parishioners about the environment. The U.S. military might get a new retirement plan. Lawmakers on Capitol Hill are working on a proposal to scrap the old plan and replace it with the 401k. If approved, the measure will privatize the military's retirement system. Mary Pat Christie, New Jersey's First Lady, says her husband is still undecided when it comes to a presidential run in 2016, but experts believe Governor Chris Christie will seek the Republican nomination, and now his wife has quit her lucrative job on Wall Street. A professor at Texas A&M fails his entire class because of disrespectful, easy for me to say, students. The professor claims the students were cheating and lying, and he says he even felt threatened, but the university says the grades won't stand. John?
All right, thanks a lot, Miranda. Well, we'll continue to keep our eye on that news conference. Hopefully we can check back in there and hear from the Baltimore City Police Commissioner, Anthony Watts. We'll give you an update. But let's turn our attention now to Brian Williams. There's been some leaks out there in the news. Maybe the ship has sailed over there at NBC. Not if NBC News chief, the new guy on the job, Andrew Lack, has anything to do with that, though. The New York Daily News now reports the ship's captain, that being Luck, doesn't want the anchor overboard. He says he wants to put Williams back on the air as soon as possible. But an NBC investigation, which is also leaked to the media, has uncovered no less than 11 lies. Maybe that's not the right word. Brian Williams has told, maybe exaggerations. The Media Research Center's Tim Graham is now joining us live to talk about this. And Tim, I read some of the comments today. They're calling this perhaps death by 1,000 leaks. All these little anecdotes getting out about Brian Williams, basically making it impossible for him to come back with this latest round of reports. Do you think Brian Williams will ever sit in that anchor chair again?
I think it's become quite clear that the people inside NBC News don't want that to happen. The rank and file, the people who make the newscast, especially the D.C. Bureau here, they were reporting in the Washington Post how much the D.C. Bureau of NBC News doesn't want him to return.
Yeah, and that has a lot to do with the fact that Brian Williams didn't show a lot of interest in politics during his time there in the anchor chair. Now, there's also this discussion about what it might take for Brian Williams to go away. We know with the Ann Curry situation, there's a multi-million-dollar payout, but obviously Brian Williams is a bigger name than Ann Curry. What type of money do you think it would take for Brian Williams to go away and be quiet?
Well, I think the amount of money goes down. This might be another reason why NBC is going to keep finding more embarrassments because it probably decreases his value on the way out. I think that at some point Williams is going to want to just get out so he can go about rehabilitating his image.
Yeah, you would think that might come after this latest round of leaks. What do you think it would actually take, though, to make that happen? Or do you think the discussions are already happening behind closed doors as we speak?
I don't think Williams really wants to give up. I think he will hold out. I think that when they hired Andrew Lack, he probably got more optimistic about his chances. So I would say he's going to hold out until he knows there's no shot whatsoever. But, when you have Dan Rather saying on CNN, I don't see how he comes back. I mean, Dan Rather knows something about not coming back.
Yeah, that's true. Dan Rather got in trouble and essentially got fired for problems with his reporting involving President George W. Bush and his time in the Texas Air National Guard. Let's talk real quickly. Do you think Brian Williams has any kind of career? Let's say it doesn't work out for him at NBC News, but what do you think Brian Williams does next?
I would think the smart play for him would be to do something that's slightly less newsy. I mean, clearly they had these stories that he wanted Jay Leno's job, for heaven's sake. I would think that maybe what he would want to do is sort of go the Katie Couric route and get one of these syndicated afternoon shows like Anderson Cooper had might be a way for him to do something that doesn't have as strict a level of facts and work his way back in that way. And then maybe somebody in cable news like CNN might have him after a certain period.
Yeah, it does. History does show us that generally folks are pretty forgiving over a period of time. And Brian Williams, obviously very popular. Ratings did show that while he was on NBC News, but a lot of questions about his return. Tim Grant, thanks so much for being with us. Always great to get your take, sir.
Thanks.
All right, we got much more coming up. We're going to continue. Okay, let's go ahead and take a listen in live. We have the Baltimore City Police Commissioner or a captain here. Let's take a listen.
At North Avenue and Pennsylvania Avenue, that crowd is peaceful, and that's what we're used to seeing in Baltimore. There's a group of people that come together peacefully to express their concern, to voice their frustrations, and to do so in a peaceful manner, and we hope that that's what we continue to see. I want to remind everyone that we have a 10 o'clock curfew this evening, and that is in effect till 5 o'clock tomorrow morning, and we will be enforcing that curfew. I think it's very appropriate right now to thank all of the people in the community. We've received emails, text messages on our social media from people across the country, across the state. In the city, we've had people bringing our officers food and water as they're out in various neighborhoods, and we want to thank them for that. We're very thankful for the show of support from our community, and I think everyone in Baltimore is looking forward to peace returning. And again, we want to extend our thanks to our regional partners, to the National Guard, to everyone that's in the city right now helping to keep us safe. With that, I'll take some questions.
Captain, some of your own officers say that there were warnings that they provided to their higher-ups that they needed more help after the violence Saturday night. Why wasn't more help here before yesterday's riots?
You know, I think that there's, this is clearly what people want to talk about. I think that it's important to add a degree of context. When we deployed our officers yesterday, we were deploying for a high school event. And I don't think that there's anyone in the country that would expect us to deploy automatic weapons and armored vehicles to an event with 13, 14, and 15-year-olds. That's not what people expect from their police department. What we saw that turn into yesterday was an incident that escalated in violence, and the age group of the people involved increased as well. So as of today, with our 235 arrests, we know that 34 of them are juveniles and 201 were adults. So clearly the dynamic of that situation changed. You saw us adapt our techniques throughout the day yesterday to address that situation, to address that concern, and where we are today, where we've called in support from all of our regional partners, and where we have that support and we're deploying it right now.
Are you confident that if there's a repeat of last night tonight, you're prepared to quell it?
What I can tell you is that we have officers that are deployed to our hotspots, that we have our regional partners and the National Guard at strategic locations and critical infrastructure, that we have the ability to respond quickly to incidents of lawlessness that take place. And again, when it's about creating context, one of the questions that we got is there's been this comparison to other locations. In other locations, the incidents have been contained to one area. What we saw last night was a group of people take advantage of a situation, of a very unfortunate situation, and use that to tear down their own neighborhoods, to destroy the businesses in their own communities. And that's a different dynamic than in other places. So our deployment today is to be able to respond to those sorts of incidents.
Like there was yesterday, there's a lot of social media talk about purges and gatherings at a mall out in Windsor, Mill, I believe it's called, and other locations. How seriously are you taking those? Are you looking into beefing up security in those places? Or?
You know, I think any threat that comes in right now, any bit of information is going to be examined for its credibility and for its veracity. We're going to continue to do investigative work. You know, we put out that release the other day that we had arrested the individual who had destroyed our police car. Much like that, we're going to do investigative work. We have detectives right now that are going to look through videotape for the people that were engaged in lawless activity last night, and we're going to find those people and arrest them. We're also going to be looking at various intelligence sources and various areas of information so that we can do whatever we can to mitigate future incidents.
Who's calling shots right now? Is it Baltimore Police, the state police?
The police commissioner is in the watch center right now, commanding the resources that are on the ground. and directing our response to incidents. But again, right now, and what I want to say that we're very thankful for is that we have that large group at North Avenue and Pennsylvania Avenue, that they're peaceful. That's the Baltimore that we're used to seeing. That's the Baltimore that we hope to continue to see throughout the rest of tonight.
Can you tell us about the curfew tonight? Just how is this in practice going to work?
So we know that the curfew is in effect from 10 o'clock at night till 5 o'clock in the morning. So unless you're engaged in work or you're on your way to receive medical treatment, you're not allowed to be out. Obviously, that's going to be enforced. We have a tremendous number of resources throughout the city, and we will enforce that curfew to make sure that our city stays safe throughout the night, so that we don't have the same sorts of incidents that took place yesterday.
So if you're coming out of a restaurant at 10:10, what happens?
You know, I don't want to get into very specific situations. I don't want to speculate about what that looks like. We could come up with 100 different situations. I think there's a degree of common sense that our officers are going to employ, but at the same time, this is about making sure that the city is safe. There's a 10 o'clock curfew. We have repeatedly put out that there's a 10 o'clock curfew, so we're telling people to please stay off the streets after 10 o'clock unless you're on your way to receive either medical treatment or you're coming from work.
There are several businesses that have included who say they called police for help to have an investigation done, that police never arrived. Is that sort of low on the priority list right now? Will they eventually get help, or will they just keep calling?
So we've obviously received a large number of calls for service. We're going to get to all of those calls for service. We're going to investigate the incidents of crime that took place in our city. I think one of the things that we want to make clear is that we have an obligation to protect life. I'm sorry, there's a siren behind me. We have an obligation to protect life. And by protecting life, by making sure that our citizens are safe and that our officers are safe, that is how we move to protect property. That is how we move to prevent other acts of lawlessness from taking place. So we'll get to those calls for service. We will absolutely investigate the criminal acts that took place. We'll do everything that we can to make sure that we're putting resources in the right place at the right time.
Were you just overwhelmed?
Additional looting that happened this morning, particularly at Lexington Market. Can you tell us anything about additional looting lawsuits that took place this morning?
So I know that this morning we've made a little of
Are you suffering from sinus congestion and allergies? Get fast relief with new My Pure Mist, the world's first hand
that they
And he
had.
was very honest, I thought, about it.
Yeah.
Saying that they weren't expecting this out of 13, 14, 15-year-old kids, and that was the bulk of what they were dealing with.
I thought he did a good job of handling that question, but still the question remains, and we heard this from Bernie Carrick during the Daily Wrap, which we played here not long ago. You have to be proactive as a police officer in these types of situations, and whether or not they were responding to a high school event, I mean, I don't know. Obviously, somebody erred in judgment there because they did not have the police they needed on the streets to prevent what took place yesterday afternoon.
Should they have maybe have anticipated that? I could understand how people could argue otherwise. I can also, in fairness to him, understand when he says, how could we possibly expect this to happen out of teenagers? I'm shocked when I look at video like that, especially when I hear that these are 13, 14, 15-year-olds.
I wish I could say I was shocked. I mean, I was shocked by the level and some of the
up in flames.
Some of the coverage we saw. The president talked about this, cameras in places, people streaming this live on the internet as they were looting stores. That's surprising to me, but what we saw, I'm sad to say I'm not too surprised based on what's taken place with Ferguson, Missouri. We heard the police captain say it's not really fair to compare this to other situations because he was talking about Ferguson, I believe, and other protest spots that were very tightly contained to one area. He said the rioters yesterday and the looters took advantage of the situation, but again, that's the police department's job, is to prevent that situation from even presenting itself so these high school kids can take advantage of it.
Right, and that happens in any kind of protest situation, that there are people that have ulterior motives. For example, we all heard about that CVS store. Again,
right.
It's hard for someone like me, maybe you at home, to wrap your head around why would someone want to attack a CVS store.
Yeah,
Something that has
the police captain
nothing
talked about that.
to do with what happened to Freddie.
Again, like a lot of the public officials commenting about this, they want to highlight the fact that there are people out there protesting peacefully.
Right.
But that gets lost when you see a CVS store being burned down for no good reason.
Yeah.
And then the police captain talking about the folks that took advantage of the situation and went out to destroy their own communities. We have the arrest numbers. He talked about that as well. A number of them juveniles, a number of them adults.
Over 200 arrested.
One thing we'll also want to see here is if how many of those folks came in from out of town. Again, the police captain talking about these folks destroying their own communities, but were there folks in the area from outside who make a career out of showing up to these types of situations to agitate things?
Right, because that's exactly what happened in Ferguson, Missouri.
Yep.
Which you may recall.
So they're trying to make some distinctions between Ferguson, Missouri and what's playing out in Baltimore, but to a lot of folks, it seems like a very similar situation. In fact, President Obama saying that earlier today from the Rose Garden. This is not new, what we're seeing in Baltimore.
Right.
And it's time for some soul searching, both by police departments and communities around the country. We got much more to come here on Newsmax Now. John Bachman and Miranda Kahn. We'll be right back talking about Baltimore and a lot else right after this.